Hello, everyone, and welcome to Police Off the Cuff After Hours Real Crime Stories. I'm your host, Bill Cannon. I'm a retired NYPD homicide sergeant. With me today, one of my favorite co-hosts, straight out of Brooklyn, Phil Grimaldi. How you doing today, Phil?
Pretty good, Bill. Excited to talk about what we got going on.
Hey, that's great. Folks, I don't know if a lot of you watched last night, but last night we did a 20-year anniversary show, 9/11 Remembered, and it basically was about on a book written by a retired NYPD Inspector Bob Morton. And I thought that the show was quite riveting and very emotional. I got choked up a few times just talking about it. And I talked to Philly about it, and he watched it. And when we showed a little clip from one of the towers coming down, you got that same feeling that you got almost 20 years ago in your pit of your stomach. Phil, what you want to comment about that? I know you're a responder also.
Wow. All I could say is wow. It just, you try to put it out of your mind and it just all came rushing back and you get that knot in your stomach. And I can remember on the morning of, I was actually home when the planes hit, but I got down there a little bit after the collapse, and that feeling, like you said, Bill, that knot in your stomach. You said it when you were showing that video, and even that. I mean, it just it all comes coming back to you. I mean, I could just looking at that picture, I could smell what we would smell down there. There was just a certain smell in the air. I don't want to get too graphic, but just horrible. And we lost so many people that day, and we're still losing people. And a lot of us have illnesses related to the exposure down there, including myself. And we just got to hope and pray that everybody could stay healthy and safe. And God forbid there should ever anything like this magnitude or any terrorist attack should ever happen again. God forbid.
Phil, it is very difficult for us first responders to talk about it, but we survived. And tonight I'm having a show, the second show, a 20-year anniversary, and it's going to be, I hope, a little loose and there's some humor involved, because the only way to get through a lot of this stuff is to have a sense of humor. And it's with the three detectives from the 2-3 squad that 20 years ago I responded to the Twin Towers with. And thank God all of us are alive, and we're going to tell a little bit about our experiences that day. And one of the things that I noticed 20 years later, and they tried to do it earlier, a lot of politicians don't like that to memorialize this day. And they're trying to stop the celebrations. They tried to stop it totally last year. Remember they did the lights and they tried to stop them from doing it, from Cuomo, the governor, to the mayor, and they blamed it on COVID. I don't know what their excuse is this year, but they're not allowing first responders to go to the ceremonies, just families of people who were lost in the attacks. And I don't know what that purpose of that is, because I think we should be allowed to memorialize it and be allowed to go to the site since we were part of it. Thoughts?
100%, Bill. I mean, it's terrible that it gets politicized. Right from the beginning, when the towers were knocked down, I and a lot of other guys that I worked with, we all wanted to see the city skyline back to the way it was. I said, put the towers up, even if you got to leave them empty. You cannot allow these scumbag terrorists to change our landscape. And then it got politicized, and they did what they did, and it's very beautiful down there. I haven't been down to the museum yet. I haven't been down to the reflecting pool yet. I just haven't felt that I wanted to put myself in that position to bring all that emotion back up. I will sometime in the future, but I think it's terrible that they're not allowing first responders to get down there on the 20th anniversary. And it's always politics, and these politicians and people who have no idea of what went on down there are going to make these decisions. Terrible, disgusting. And we need to honor these heroes and the people that were lost. And if people are going to feel solace and comfort that we're down at ground zero and toiled on the pile for a year or 6 months or even a day, and if that's what's going to bring them comfort, they should be allowed to do it.
Yeah, well, 100%. And I just wanted to say that it does help people to be able to memorialize this event that happened 20 years ago. And the sad thing is that politicians who had no part in this, they want to insert themselves into it. And I just wish they would stay away. I think many of the families voted to tell Biden to stay away, because they won't allow the Saudi government to come clean with what they knew about the attacks prior. I mean, I don't want to get too political in this, but it's sort of a shame because it's. I've been to the memorial several times. I brought my class when I was teaching college, and it was tough. It was tough to walk through there, and you know, my class, even a couple of the kids had family members that were lost, and they were all in tears looking at the memorial. So it's a very powerful thing. And anyway, tonight at 8 p.m., myself and 3 detectives from the 2-3 squad are just going to sort of memorialize it and reminisce what our experience was going down there on that day.
Bill, can I just say one thing? You touched on, there's a lawsuit that's been going through the federal court system to get Saudi Arabia to turn over documents. Actually, they were successful in some of it, but the United States government, the FBI, Homeland Security, the intelligence, the CIA, they're holding back on information. And this is why Biden was asked not to come to the ceremonies on 9/11. And anybody that's listening, if you can make calls or put pressure on your local, government officials, that would be greatly appreciated. And call for the United States government to release any and all pertinent information regarding the Saudi Arabian government with relation to the 9/11 attacks.
100%. All right. Having said that, now Wednesday night at 9 p.m., we have like this. This is actually his 3rd time on the show. And there he is, Joe Pistone, a.k.a. Donnie Brasco, the most famous FBI undercover in the history of the FBI. Unbelievable guy. And he's going to come on the show, but he's going to be accompanied by an NYPD hero by the name of Tommy Dades, who happened to be a mafia expert. There he is. And Tommy Dades wasn't only an organized crime expert, but a 1st-grade detective. And he volunteered his time. He was a boxer. He fought heavyweight for the PBA boxing team. And he gave years of his time to train kids in the hood how to box. Saved a lot of kids' lives by being almost like a father figure to them. And he's a real hero, not just on the police department, but with the kids, a lot of kids in Brooklyn. And so we're going to have Tommy Dades, who also gets credit. There's his book. He was instrumental in putting away those 2 individuals on the cover of this book, who became known as the Mafia Cops, and Steve Caracappa and Louis Ippolito. And they had actually retired from the NYPD, and they had done hits for the Mafia, for Gas Pipe Casso, who was their connection. And they had retired and moved to Las Vegas. And I think the NYPD Internal Affairs was actually done investigating this case. And Tommy Dades retired. He basically was told not to investigate it. He retired and went to work for the Brooklyn DA's office, where he picked up the case and continued to work on this case. Phil, I know you know a lot about it. Why don't you pick up where I just left off?
Okay, first I want to say Joe Pistone, Bill, you hit it right on the head. He was probably one of the most successful undercovers in the history of the FBI, but he was also, I think, any law enforcement agency in the United States. The guy was undercover 6 years. He played the role of a mafia associate. He did it without being blown his cover. There's so many different twists in the stories where he was spotted by a U.S. attorney in an airport, and he just right away just handled it. Where he actually slugged the guy, and the guy who he was with, I think it was Sonny Black. Why'd you do that? He said the guy grabbed my ass or something. So he was so good at what he did. I mean, his story is riveting. We only scratched the surface when we had him on the last 2 times. But along with him, Tommy Dades. Now, I'm personal friends with Tommy. I worked with Tommy. We worked together in the squad, and we also worked together in the intelligence division. But when it comes down to this mob cop stuff, I mean, these guys sold their shields to the mob. There's nothing worse, no more of a betrayal that could be done. And I'm so proud to have won that detective shield. And these 2 scumbags sold their shields, and they went out and they did contract murders for the mafia. Nothing worse. The worst betrayal, the worst corruption scandal in NYPD history. And Tommy, along with Joe Ponzi and other members of law enforcement. Mike Vecchione was one of the prosecutors from the Brooklyn DA's office. Joe was a bureau chief investigator for the DA's office. Joe was instrumental that he got Bert Kaplan to flip and on these two guys, and it's just a tremendous case. There's been several times where they've been trying to get a motion picture, but it's just such a big story they can't get it on a motion picture. They're hoping to get maybe a series done on it just to tell the story. I mean, there's so many twists and turns with that. And Tommy, you talked about him. He retired in the early 2000s, went to work for the DA's office. Then he retired from there. A couple of years ago, I can't get too much into detail. A couple of years ago, Tommy and I were talking. He was contacted by a former informant, and he was asking me about a homicide that occurred in and around the 6-0 precinct area where I was a detective in the squad in the 90s. It was actually, they thought it was over in the 6-2, which was the next precinct over. And when he started telling me the details, I said, Tommy, that was my homicide. And there's still things being done on that case. I mean, for the last 2 years, we've been talking with the cold case squad, and there's good reason to believe they might be involved in that case. And it was, I think they were charged with 8 or 9, but there was rumored to be more than that, more murders that they committed. So Tommy, even from retirement, he got information from an informant, and we passed it on, and we were working closely with the cold case squad to possibly, bring charges on that case. So we'll see what happens with that. But it's going to be a riveting show. Tommy is he's like an encyclopedia with mob stuff. He grew up in Brooklyn, and he knew a lot of guys growing up. And then he went on to the police force, and he was in narcotics for a while. He was an undercover. And then when he got into the detective bureau, he went into the detective squad. He just applied what he knew from the street to start targeting different organized crime guys, and it just mushroomed into his whole career. Became all about organized crime. He's a real organized crime expert in Brooklyn, New York, for sure.
Phil, one of the amazing things I've maybe known Tommy Dades now for, I don't know, 6 or 8 months, and the only time I've ever met him has been on this show, and he's been on the show like 3 times. But I feel like I've known him for years. Because. Yeah. We clicked. We immediately liked each other, and I know that. Oh, look, I had a lot of good people vouch for me that told Tommy Dades he's a good guy. He's a retired homicide sergeant. So, if I didn't turn out good, they would have got whacked. Well,
I think the reason you guys probably clicked is Tommy was always a very proactive cop detective. You were the same way. So I think it was easy to click with him. And when you talk to somebody that's got integrity and got a great reputation like yourself, it's easy to get along with them,
Yeah, that's great. I'm actually excited for the show Wednesday night, because we've had Joe Pistone on 3. This is his 3rd time. He's been on twice. Right. He was on once by himself and once with his friend Bob Starkman, who's a retired customs enforcement agent, and also a Hall of Fame college basketball coach. So 2 amazing guys, and they're like 2 peas in a pod. They're best friends, so they're always hanging out with each other. And so he came on twice, and we haven't even scratched the surface of his knowledge and of the story, because, folks, if you just saw the movie Donnie Brasco, believe me, the book tells a story that is 10 times more detailed than the movie. I like the movie, don't get me wrong, but to understand what Joe Pistone, aka Donnie Brasco, actually did with his 6 years undercover it's just incredible. And then on the same card, to have mob expert, NYPD first grade detective Tommy Dades, I'm excited about it.
Absolutely. And I think you make a great point, Bill. When you talk about a motion picture, a Hollywood motion picture dramatizing a story, there's always different things done for, dramatic reasons, and they change things and this and that. Like for instance, one of the things we know for certain was the person who Al Pacino played in the movie. At the end, he takes off his rings and stuff, and he goes knowing that he's getting called in by the mob, and he knows he's going to get killed, and he goes. And that wasn't actually Lefty; it was actually Sonny Black. switch the character for dramatic reasons. And always when there's a book is much more detailed and gives a lot more insight into what actually happened. But the movie was great. I mean, it was fantastic. I mean, big names in the movie. And if you didn't see it, there's the homework, people. Look at the movie if you can before the show. You can look at old episodes of Police Off the Cuff where Donnie Brasco was on, as well as Tommy Dades. I was on the show with you, Bill, when we had Donnie and Stockman, Bob Stockman, the customs guy.
Right.
I thought that was a great show as well. So yeah, you could, even if you just go through it and listen to a couple of things, it'll give you a good idea of what went on. And this is going to be a really good show, I'm sure of it. And whatever time we do it in, if it's an hour, if it's a little more, whatever it is, it's still not going to encompass the whole story of Tommy and Joe. And they, by the way, they know each other. They've become friendly over the years from different interactions in law enforcement subjects and stuff. So, but I think this is one of the first times they're going to be together on a podcast and talking about all the stuff organized crime related. You know, it should be great. It should be great.
Scott Inquirer says, Bill, oh, pretty please do not give the ending of the books. We won't do that. I think it's sort of known, but no, we won't give away the endings. But what it's really going to be is little vignettes of stories. They're going to both be telling like amazing stories. And, you know, they speak the same language. And obviously, even when Joe Pistone came on our show, we're all cops. We're all law enforcement. So, of course, he felt a kinship with us that he doesn't always get when he gets interviewed on YouTube. And he's done some of the interviews he's done on YouTube, a couple of them have like over 10 million views. And I'm like, oh my God, you know, I if I got numbers like that, I'd retire, you know, but yeah, 10 million views. So he's obviously a really interesting guy. And when you follow his career in the FBI, you know, I think he started out, he got a college degree. He was in the Army for a while, and he taught high school, I think, for a while, or I know he taught for a while. And then he went on the FBI, and he had a lot of experience, like driving trucks and working heavy equipment. So his first experiences as an undercover were like doing truck hijackings, which I thought that was cool, but scary, right? Because a truck hijacking could become really violent. You know, and the FBI took a chance that he would be able to handle himself and stay away from the violence of it.
You know, think about it. Just living that life. You know, you're not an FBI agent when he goes undercover. He's not a law enforcement officer. He's a thug in the street, so to speak. He's a street guy. I mean, that's what you have to become, and you have to react to things. There's situations that happen in the street when you're around these guys, and you have to be able to react to it correctly, that it's not going to raise an eyebrow and say, geez, you know, I said this or that, or this happened or that happened, and he reacted that way. He had to react the way a guy in the street, a guy in the life, so to speak, would react. And I think that was probably very difficult for him to hone skills to do that. But obviously he was successful in it, and he told stories about different things that happened. I mean, he was in scrapes with guys and fights and bought things, and he knew that when he reacted to certain things, he had to say things a certain way, or it could be misconstrued that he wasn't a legitimate guy. You know, that he could have been a cop or an agent. They call him agent. You know, so he really it's some story. It's riveting, and you know. Every time we talk to him, it's like, you know, you learn something new. And even though you read the book or you watch the movie, you just hear different things. And it just, you know, you can visualize it and you see it coming from his mouth, you know?
Well, you know, Phil, I call what he was able to do as he understood mobisms. Like, for example, you couldn't disrespect a made guy. And if a made guy hit you, you couldn't hit him back. I mean, all those crazy things that were the rules, you know, or as Sammy the Bull on his podcast, he puts it, that's Cosa Nostra. You know, that's our thing.
It's true. It's true. I grew up in Gravesend, Brooklyn, and there was just, I grew up in the 60s and 70s, and there was just mobsters ingratiated into the neighborhood that was like, you know, Mobster Central Avenue, where I grew up. Anyways, you knew these things from, you know, hearing all, like as a teenager, I knew, you know, you can't hit a mob guy. If a guy's a made guy and you hit him, that's a death sentence. And so many things, you couldn't mess around with a guy's wife or girlfriend, and all these different rules that they had. And the funny thing is, there's parallels between the military, law enforcement, and the mob. I mean, they had rules, and if you broke the rules, you were going to suffer consequences, you know. And they had a code, we had a code, and I don't want to say that their code and our code were exactly alike. Obviously, they weren't. I mean, we go into retirement, they go into the cemetery on their retirement.
They don't have
they
don't have a retirement plan, they like we have. Anyway, folks, if you're not subscribed to Police Off the Cuff, please do so. Go onto YouTube, hit the subscribe button, give a thumbs up, ring the bell. You can follow us on Facebook. We have a website, which soon we're getting merchandise on. You can visit our website, policeoffthecuff.com. And as I said, if you're not subscribed, please do so. I see a lot of people when we do these early shows from South Africa, from UK, Ireland, from all over the world. And we're so happy to have you guys. If you're from overseas, put a one in the chat. I'd love to see quickly who is here from overseas. So again, tonight we're going to be doing another story on 9/11 with the 3 detectives that I responded with, and Wednesday night, Stop Animal Cruelty, 1 Great Britain. Okay, Wednesday night, Joe Pistone, aka Donnie Brasco, with the great first grade retired NYPD detective Tommy Dades, and it's just going to be an incredible. These guys are. Besides being great cops, and Joe Pistone, a great FBI agent, they're also great storytellers. And the stories happen to be true. And there is something like Phil will tell you, and I'll tell you, cops love to tell war stories. They live to have that beer in the bar and tell their latest war story or their best war story. And other cops love to listen to them. And some guys are better at telling the stories than others. Tommy Dades happens to be one of the best, because he's got like a photographic memory. He remembers all of this stuff. And like when he started talking to me, I was like, Tommy, could you write some of this down and send it to me? Because I'm not going to be able to remember all this stuff. Right, Philly?
It's unbelievable. Now, I talk to Tommy on like a daily basis, and sometimes I'll just remember something from growing up or something from the job, a case or an incident or a name. And I go, Tommy, you remember so-and-so? And he just starts spitting out. He'll go from that story to another related story with the same guy. And then from that story, he goes into a third story, and he's really well knowledged and versed on anything organized crime that happened over the last 30 years, 40 years, and even from when he was a kid. And it's really something to hear him. And I just want to sit back and listen to the stories of the two of them. It's going to be great. It's going to be great.
I just want to, we'll touch upon Louis Ippolito and Stephen Caracappa. And folks, they were called the Mafia Cops. And what they were doing initially was they were selling information to the Mafia, like the locations of certain bad guys where they were hiding out. But one of the most egregious things they did was Caracappa gave the wrong information to them, the wrong name and the wrong address to a guy who happened to have the same name as the mobster they were looking for. So what happened was they killed an innocent kid. And that was the most horrendous thing that happened. And I'm not giving away the story because that was just one of many things that Louis Ippolito and Steve Caracappa did.
That was horrific, what you're talking about. But there's a really important component to that story. They were selling information to Gas Pipe Queso was his nickname. And there was an attempt on his life, and he knew one of the guy's names. He gave the name to through an intermediary, gave the name, and Caracappa got it. He ran him in a computer, came up with a kid's name, and I think the kid's name was Nikki Guido, and he was only 18 years old. And on Christmas Day, he was shot and killed, and he was the wrong Nikki Guido. But that actually was pivotal in flipping the intermediary, which was a guy by the name of Bert Kaplan, and Joe Ponzi got him to cooperate. It's a tremendous story. And but yeah, these two guys sold their badges, and unfortunately, not only guys related to organized crime were killed, innocent people were killed. And I don't think there could be anything worse than that. It's just egregious that this poor kid on Christmas Day was killed outside of his house, showing his uncle his new car that he got for Christmas. And horrible.
Unbelievable. Bobby Cavallo, I hope I pronounced your name correctly. You wrote he broke every rule in the FBI in order to stay undercover. He had to. Well, Bobby Cavallo, the rules weren't written because no one had ever gone undercover for more than like 6 months or a year. He went undercover for 6 years. So they had to rewrite the rules because they never had anyone do what he did. He lived the life of a mobster, and the way that he had to stay undercover it saved his life so many times. If he didn't, of course, rules sometimes are made to be broken, especially if you have to save your life. And if someone's an undercover narcotics guy and he goes up into an apartment and they put a gun to his head and they said, snort this cocaine. You think he's going to then say, oh, no, I'm a cop, I'm not allowed to? No, he's going to snort the cocaine. And not only is he breaking the rules, he's breaking the law, but he's also saving his life. And narcotics on the NYPD has a certain procedure to follow when and if that happens. And I was never in narcotics, but I know how they work. And I know that they would immediately take the undercover right to the hospital. And they document that he had to do cocaine because we get randomly drug tested. I mean, Phil, I think you probably know more about that than I do. You were in narcotics, right?
No, I was never in narcotics, but I do know, obviously, I don't want to say too much about it, but if a person is got a gun to their head and they got to save their life, and they also got to protect the integrity of the investigation, which is obviously the goal, and they do have to ingest an illegal substance, then it's documented like you said, they're brought to the hospital. They're actually kept in the hospital if they could do it without being discovered till they're actually not intoxicated anymore. And then there's different notifications made to the medical division and stuff like that. And they obviously document it, and it can't be used to say, this guy in a random drug test is in violation of our policy and fire the guy. They document it. So, but going back to Donnie Brasco, if he's in a situation where he's got to do something that, they have a parameter of rules that he can do, and obviously he can't engage in killing anybody or anything like that, but he's got parameters he has to live up to. And if he breaks those parameters and if this save the integrity of the investigation, the goal is to bring down an organized crime family and obviously to keep himself safe. I'm sure that they had, like you said, they had to rearrange some of the rules, and actually they did give him an assignment to kill somebody. Obviously, it was never followed through. I mean, the case came to a close before that happened. But there's so many different things, and he was given. He went into the mob life as like a jewel thief or a burglar, and they had supplied him with different types of jewelry. He took courses on how to spot fake diamonds and stuff like that. So he was. There was a lot of work that went into the planning of him doing this undercover assignment too. So,
well, you have to have everything covered. You have to anticipate questions that they're going to ask you. For example, Donnie Brasco, you married, you got a girlfriend. He had that cover all set because he knew he was going to be asked that. Yeah, I got a girlfriend in California, but we just see each other once in a while. It's not that we don't live together or anything. So that was convenient.
If they want to test you, they put something that's fugazi, like remember from the movie, it's fugazi. They put a fake diamond in front of him and say, yeah, Donnie, you know about jewels. What is this worth? And he threw it back. This is a piece of garbage. It's fugazi, So that could have been a test, to see who he is and if he really is who he says he is or if he knows what he's talking about.
100%. That was his earliest test. Phil, I'm going to take a little commercial break. You want to do the first one?
Sure. Are you tired of the same old surroundings? Are you looking to relocate? Or are you just in need of a real estate agent in the Myrtle Beach, South Carolina area? Well, Carol Waters is your girl. Her and her husband, Rob Mahan, who's a retired member of the NYPD and the New York Fire Department, are both $1 million sales agents in that area. Carol and her husband, Rob, can be reached at 914-261-6681. That's 914-261-6681. Or you can email her at carolwaterssalesmb@gmail.com. That's carolwaterssalesmb@gmail.com. Joe Murray, a very frequent guest on the Police Off the Cuff show. Have you found yourself in a jam, or are you in need of legal counsel in the New York area? Do you need a victim's advocate? Well, Joe Murray is your man. He's not only an experienced attorney, a trial attorney, he's also a retired 15-year member of the NYPD. He knows both sides of the fence. His website is jmurray-law.com. That's jmurray-law.com. His telephone number is 646-838-1702, or his email is joe@jmurray-law.com. That's joe@jmurray-law.com. He's obviously been on the show, and he's a great attorney, and you can see by his previous appearances on the show.
Folks, Police Coffee is an officer-owned business dedicated to crafting the finest coffees and blends. They're made to provide you with the freshest coffee available. Each batch is roasted fresh by people who know what it means to stay vigilant. And their specialty coffees do not waste one drop when flavor is concerned. Their coffee is some of the best you'll find, but it also helps serve an important cause, giving back to our community. 50% of the profits goes towards helping family members of police officers who fell in the line of duty. To order coffee and related products from policecoffee.com, go to the website. There are over 7 types of coffee to choose from. 50% of the profits go to officers' family in need. And for a 10% discount, use OTC10. That's off the cuff 10. Get it on the website, policecoffee.com. Michael O'Keefe is an author and retired NYPD first-grade detective. He's the author of 3 novels, Shot to Pieces, A Reckoning in Brooklyn, and Burnt to a Crisp. You can order his books on Amazon.com or his website, michaelo'keefeauthor.com. Great books. I've read all 3 of them, and Mike is one hell of a writer, that's for sure. So, I don't want to give away too much about what we're going to talk about Wednesday night, because we don't specifically know, because Tommy Dades and Joe Pistone, they could take this in any direction they want, but Joe Pistone in his life after the FBI, besides writing books and consulting on movies, he teaches how to be an undercover, which is not an easy thing to do. And the closest, Phil, that you and I have ever been to undercover work is being an anti-crime, and which is totally different. You're in plain clothes, and when I talk about anti-crime, it's now a thing of the past. The NYPD doesn't have anti-crime anymore, but I took great pride in working anti-crime, both as a police officer and as a sergeant. And to me, it was I loved anti-crime, and there was a way to work anti-crime that was passed down from other great cops to the next generation of cops. And unfortunately, that's gone now, but you know what I'm saying about being an undercover anti-crime, Phil?
Absolutely. I mean, anti-crime, for people that don't know, in the NYPD, you would work in plain clothes, and you would try to interject yourself into the neighborhood where you worked, to be around. Maybe there was going to be a purse snatch or a chain snatch or a robbery, and you'd secrete yourself into the neighborhood in plain clothes, and so as to not be noticed. A lot of times, if you were driving around the undercover cars, they were easily noticeable. But on occasion, we would actually use our own cars, and so you could really be secreted into the neighborhood without being noticeable. So, and it was a great assignment, like you said. And we did, we'd have binoculars, we'd watch different things that were going on if they were breaking into some place, or, we didn't really do narcotics. We really weren't allowed during the times that I was in that crime. You weren't allowed to do narcotics for fear of corruption. They had the narcotics unit that did that. But, it was one of the comments, and I think it was Lynn's, Lindzz. She asked if both of us had run-ins with mafia guys. I actually was in the Detective Bureau during the Colombo Mob War, and I had occasion to respond to several shootings, and there was a murder of a well-known organized crime guy by the name of Nikki Black. He was gunned down in the streets, and responded to that. And I actually had one of the shootings that took place during the Colombo Mob War. We responded to Coney Island, a guy who was shot, and he was the son of a made guy, and obviously they didn't tell us too much, and we actually had to go to the made guy social club and try and interview him, and he was real pleasant. You know, they had a deep respect for law enforcement, believe it or not. Not all of these guys were you know, nasty to the cops. He said, listen, guys, I understand where you're coming from. I know you got to do your job, but, you know, I'm not going to tell you anything. And I'm sorry to, you know, I don't want to be disrespectful. Would you like to come into the club and have a cup of coffee or a little something to eat? You know, real respectful. And so that was the interactions that I had. Not all of them were like that. Some of them, you know, got a little stupid and you'd have to get tough with them. And, you know, Dade's, I'm sure we'll talk about that. And, but then there was another comment I saw that, about how Donnie Brasco was only home a few number of times. I think it was like 5 or 6 times, right, Bill, in the whole 6 years?
No, he about 5 or 6 times a year. So in the 6 years, he said that he got home under 40 times.
Wow.
Actually, see his family.
That's just incredible.
Yeah, and he had three young girls, and he didn't get to go to their sports. He didn't get to see them grow up. He, in essence, missed 6 years of their life, which I would think would be the most difficult thing to do, to not see your family. I know, Philly, you got young girls, right? And how tough would it be for you not to be in their life for 6 years?
I think that's a tremendous sacrifice, tremendous. And I always talk about that. If I woke up and didn't see my children in the morning, I mean, even just for a second, it's really terrible, you know, and that's a tremendous sacrifice. You really got to tip your hat to him on that point. And, you know, that's commitment to his job and commitment to the FBI and commitment to the United States of America to do such a thing. That's real commitment.
100%. Sheila had asked, Bill, does the NYPD use women undercover? Yes, but, you know, they've sort of, other than narcotics undercovers, there isn't a lot of undercover right now that I'm aware of, although obviously internal affairs, which goes to investigate police corruption, they have undercovers. So the only undercovers that I'm aware of that the NYPD uses at this time is internal affairs and narcotics. And I could be wrong, but that's, as far as I know, that's the only undercovers I know about. Phil, what do you think?
When I was in Coney Island, there was a prostitution problem. So they had the public morals division did enlist female police officers as undercovers to, you know, to arrest Johns, I guess, to play prostitutes and stuff like that. I don't know if that stuff still goes on. I think there was, obviously, in the last couple of years with Bill de Blasio, the worst mayor in the history of New York City, they cut back on a lot of different plainclothes units within the NYPD. Obviously, they got rid of anti-crime, street crime. So I think there's probably very limited or no female undercovers in the public morals division. I really don't know. Like you said, we're retired. We're not plugged into all of that. But it doesn't seem very likely.
Factual breakdown says technology probably made certain types of undercover obsolete. I don't know if obsolete, but yeah, technology has helped tremendously in all investigative work, especially in New York City. There's cameras everywhere. Cameras are an unbelievable investigative resource to detectives everywhere because they can give you, they can't always identify the perp, but they can give you a timestamp. They could show you exactly when something happened. They can give you what the perp looked like, what he was wearing, but you can't specifically identify the face, although then they can also marry that to facial recognition. So yes, the technology is just, it's made the job a hell of a lot easier than it ever was.
There's a flip side to that too, Bill, because technology can also help undercovers. I know of an organized crime, a guy that flipped. He was a mafia boss. His name was Frank Copa, and he wore a bug inside of his watch, his Rolex, for about 2 years, recording conversations with other mobsters. So I don't want to get too deep into technology, but it also works the other way around. I mean, they can. You know, there's technology that, you know, you can protect an undercover with the technology today, too. I don't want to get too deep into it, but that's just one example. I mean, that was publicly known that he wore a wire in his watch, and that was in the 90s. So you can imagine the technology that was, updated today and is married into undercover police work. So I guess we'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, how much more sophisticated it is. So, what we're trying to do here too in Police Off the Cuff, Real Crime Stories is we're trying to give you some a whole bevy of different types of shows, from celebrating the great careers of police officers, detectives, captains, chiefs. I think it gives you that side of the job, but also in real crime stories, focusing on different stories in different parts of the country, but also when we are able to get two amazing guests like we're getting Wednesday night, Joe Pistone and Tommy Dades, their stories need to be told, because when stories don't get told, they die with the person that has them in their brain, and that should never happen. It has to be documented in some way. And when we first started Police Off the Cuff, we thought that it's a great thing to document the careers of amazing detectives, police officers, and the only way to document it is to have them tell their story, and you ask them questions, or else these stories, like, I always bring up Mikey Heinrichs, one of the most highly decorated detectives in the NYPD history, 212 medals, 2 combat crosses, 2 medals of valor.
Wow.
If you had 2 combat crosses and 2 medals of valor right now, they would put you out to pasture right away. They would not, probably if you had 2 combat crosses, they wouldn't let you go out on the street again, because it's just for the police to, public relations. They're like, oh, this guy killed 2 people, It's not a good thing.
Bill, that you just talked about, I don't mean to interrupt you, but Mikey Heinrichs, those 4 medals, those are some of the highest medals that you can earn in the NYPD without being killed. So he was really, I worked with Mike on a couple of cases. He was in the homicide squad, and I had the great experience to work hand in hand with him on some cases over the years. We were in the detective bureau at the same time and stuff, and great guy. And yeah, I mean, 2 combat crosses, the other ones, 2 honorable mentions, and whatever it was. I mean, fantastic detective and a real NYPD hero.
100%. Philly, we're coming up on 45 minutes. I just wanted to sort of, give a sort of an overview of what we're going to be doing Wednesday night, and the show that I have tonight with the 3 detectives that I responded to 9/11 with. Stacy J, I wanted to answer your question. Is the Mafia still going today? Yes, but they're very much weakened because of people like Joe Pistone. And one of the biggest things that weakened the Mafia was something called the RICO statute. And that's not a guy from Spanish Harlem. RICO is racketeering, influence, corrupt organizations, and they use that law to just put people away for almost ever. So if they can prove that it was an ongoing criminal enterprise, they can give sentences like 40 and 50 years. So what that resulted in was a lot of people turning state's evidence and cooperating with the government. And that basically took apart organized crime.
Yeah, the RICO statute obviously was applied in the world of organized crime, but it's also been in drug cartels, drug gangs, and stuff like that. That the RICO statute, like you said, it's a continuing criminal enterprise, so to speak. The theory is that if I'm doing something and you're doing something, and we together commit the same crime to give money to somebody higher up, and generally that's how it works. And all you have to do is prove those different things in the criminal investigation, but the sentencings are almost doubled. So somebody that would have got 15 or 20 years is now getting 40 years, and it kind of squeezes them to cooperate and give information, and it's been very successful. The mob has been on and off on the run over the years, but it's still very much alive. It's just it's a whole different world today, and Tommy Dades will probably get into that on our show tomorrow night. And Joe, I'm sure, has a lot of input on that too. But yeah, I think that the 2 people we have on, Joe Pistone put a super hurting on organized crime, what he did. And Tommy Dades also had a hand in putting a hurting on, along with many other investigators, detectives, DEA agents, FBI, and then the mob cops. I mean, we're going to have, these are superstars in law enforcement we're having tomorrow night, Bill. They're superstars, 100%.
Yeah, no, it's I'm really looking forward to it. Tommy Dades once said to me, I said, "How's the mafia now?" He goes, "They can't even get a reservation at a restaurant." And I said, "I don't know if it's that bad," but he said, "Yeah, it is because of the work of a lot of these great FBI agents and detectives, and of course the RICO statute, which probably I remember when we did all those mob terminology, and they said, "What was the golden age of the mafia?" And the answer was the days before RICO,
Yep.
because
Yep.
they didn't have that crazy,
Yeah.
crazy law to put people away for, you know,
Bill, there's a lot of things to be said about the mob. I mean, I always kind of tag it as mobsters, muscle, and misfits, because there was the real mobsters. There was the guys that were the muscle, the killers, the guys that broke legs. And then there was these guys that hung around and degenerate gamblers, and they were kind of like misfits. So I guess that's a way to put it. And maybe the misfits couldn't get a reservation in a restaurant, but the top-notch guys, they could get their reservations done. I mean, it's different today. It's changed, but and we have some we're working on some other guests to try and give the other side of the coin too. You want to talk about that, Bill?
yeah, well, we're always looking to have some really interesting guests, and I'm always working on getting some amazing guests. And the best way to get amazing guests is to know amazing people, because they can hook you up with who their friends are. And we're working on one of the biggest mafia guys to come on the show. And I don't want to give his name right now, but if it happens, if we get a commitment, I'm going to let everyone know. And then I'm also trying to get a very famous actor to come on who's involved in a lot of the mafia movies and stuff. And again, I don't want to drop his name because until he gives me a commitment. And I had a commitment via text message, but till the person commits to a date, I'm not going to use their name. But we're trying to bring really interesting guests and shows. People are guessing in the chat, but I'm not gonna give it up.
No, we can't. We can't give it up until it's 100% hard commitment that we're going to do the show. But I think everybody will recognize who we're talking about. There's a couple of things we're working on, and I think it's going to give a good perspective. Listen, we're in law enforcement. We were on the other side of the fence that these people were on, and we don't, we don't support what they did or anything like that. But publicly, it would be great to get the other side, the perspective. You're going to hear, just like when we have Joe Murray on the show and he talks about, defending a guy that may have committed a heinous crime. It's good to get the other side on the organized crime trend that goes on in the country over the last 30, 40, 50 years. So we're going to have some interesting guests, and I don't think there's anything wrong with listening to what they have to say, and it's going to be insightful, and it's just another perspective, and going back to the Summer Wells case that we were on, if something develops with that, I'm sure we'll do more stuff on that, and we're going to stay plugged into all the current cases, information, things that would be interesting to the listeners, and we're here. We're doing the job. We're doing the police off the cuff after hours crime stories.
Philly, I just wanted to say that we're not going to do anything on the Summer Wells case unless there's new information. We can't just
That's
keep
what I was getting
repeating
at.
the same stuff and from a
Yeah.
different angle or from a different perspective. If there's new information, we will gladly go up on that case. It's a very interesting case. I have my theories in regards to that case. But unless there's new information, we're not going to just repeat the same stuff. So, because I think it's, I don't know, it's sort of patronizing to the people that are listening. So we're going
It's
to,
beating a dead horse. If there's developments,
yes,
obviously we'll jump right on it. But I think that we gave a really good, over all the shows we did on it, we gave a really good perspective on our thoughts. We were challenged on some things. We answered it, and we're not going to change our opinions. And it is what it is. Like you said, if there's further developments, we'll be on it.
100%. And, we're also plugged in with Texas and Midwest EquiSearch, who regularly call in to us through Duty Ron and through myself. And they're going to tell us if they're going to go back there. And that would be a new development. We would report on that. But other than that, we're not just going to keep repeating old information. So, and we're hoping that law enforcement comes across with something on the Summer Wells case and there's some movement. But anyway, folks, so tonight, again, we have another special 9/11 show starting at 8 p.m. with the 3 detectives I responded with that day. And Wednesday, again, Joe Pistone and Tommy Dades. Phil, final words?
Final words. I want to give a plug. I did a podcast for Mike Cologne, Mike in New Haven, and sees audio. It aired Thursday and Friday. Anybody that wants to see an interesting podcast, I talk a little bit about my career and the things that I did. I thought it was a pretty interesting show, and we'll give some props out to Mike. Tomorrow night's show, looking forward to it. We talked about all the different areas we're going to touch on with the 2 superstars in law enforcement related to organized crime. It's going to be riveting. And we talked about the upcoming things that we're working on. Fingers crossed we'll get some more interesting guests, maybe for people from the other side of the tracks, as they say. And looking forward to it, Bill.
All right, great. I'm Bill Cannon on behalf of Police Off the Cuff. Real crime stories for myself and Phil Grimaldi. Good night, everyone. Thanks for watching.
Stay safe, everybody.